I believe Andrew and Meghan have crossed paths before. That may explain why Harry and Meghan appeared to shield Prince Andrew. Perhaps they stayed silent because Andrew could easily fire back and confirm that he does, in fact, know Meghan, creating a classic tit-for-tat standoff. The York family has long enjoyed protection from Harry and Meghan, but it looks like the gloves are about to come off. At the heart of the Sussex story sits one glaring, years-old question that has been conspicuously absent from public discussion. Why have Harry and Meghan never gone after Prince Andrew? Consider their track record. They authored one of the most explosive royal memoirs in modern history, naming names, revealing private conversations, and airing long-held grievances. They gave explosive interviews, including the bombshell sit-down with Oprah Winfrey that rocked the monarchy. They've sued newspapers and repeatedly shared their narrative of pain and persecution. Yet, when it came to Prince Andrew, a senior royal whose reputation has been thoroughly and publicly dismantled, Harry and Meghan were almost completely silent. Their memoir contained just one fleeting paragraph, which, as many noted at the time, wasn't really about Andrew at all. It focused instead on Harry's own security issues. It was never an attempt to hold his uncle accountable. So why the restraint? When they were willing to burn so many other bridges so publicly, why did they draw the line at Andrew? What did they know? And more importantly, what did Andrew know about them? Those lingering questions, once simmering in the background, have suddenly become urgent. A major shift is underway that could reshape not only Harry and Meghan's future, but the entire British royal family. The person at the center of this tension is someone who has spent nearly 3 decades being underestimated and dismissed: Sarah Ferguson. Sarah Ferguson is preparing to write a book. And the people, most alarmed by that prospect, are not the courtiers at Buckingham Palace or the king's advisors. They are Harry and Meghan themselves. That alone speaks volumes. The royal family is currently navigating one of its most turbulent periods in modern times. The fallout from the Sussexes' departure continues, while Andrew's scandals have only deepened. The wider network surrounding the Yorks, including Beatrice and Eugenie, their parents, and the delicate web of relationships and compromises that once held everything together, is now under unprecedented strain. Meanwhile, Sarah Ferguson finds herself in an unfamiliar and precarious position. Stripped of her home at Royal Lodge, effectively cut off from the institution she once married into, and with her ex-husband facing ongoing consequences, she has no official role or safe harbor left. Her daughters, Beatrice, 36, and Eugenie, 34, face uncertain futures within the royal framework. And, as is often the case with Fergie, financial pressures remain a constant burden. Recent reports describe her spending time at an ultra-exclusive wellness retreat in Switzerland, staying in borrowed luxury villas, all while friends say she is effectively without stable income or a permanent home. For anyone familiar with her history, this combination of expensive tastes and dwindling resources is exactly the kind of pressure that has made her unpredictable in the past. When you combine her isolation, financial stress, and sense of abandonment by the institution she once served, the result is a woman with very little left to lose, and a great deal to say. For publishers, that is an incredibly powerful mix. This collision, Fergie's desperation on one side and the Sussexes' vulnerability on the other, has created a moment of real tension. Because what Sarah Ferguson knows about Harry and Meghan is not idle gossip or second-hand rumor. It is first-hand knowledge, things seen, heard, and witnessed directly. And that information could prove profoundly damaging. Harry and Meghan are reportedly following these developments very closely. Harry and Meghan are acutely aware that a memoir of this magnitude would inevitably revisit the most explosive and contentious chapters of recent royal history. They are deeply anxious about how their own actions and private conversations might be portrayed. Sarah Margaret Ferguson, Duchess of York, is now 65. For nearly 4 decades, she has existed in the orbit of the British royal family. Never fully part of it, but accepted when convenient, tolerated when manageable, and repeatedly cast aside when she became an inconvenience. Few people understand how this family truly operates better than she does. Its rhythms, its hypocrisies, its fierce private loyalties, and its very public cruelties. She was present at the table during some of the most turbulent periods in modern royal history. The War of the Windsors, her own very public divorce, the Diana era, the subsequent rebuilding, the long rehabilitation of the monarchy under Queen Elizabeth II, and the more recent crises involving the Sussexes and Prince Andrew's unraveling. All of this unfolded against the backdrop of a modern media landscape that shows little patience for the old rules of deference and discretion. Throughout it all, Fergie watched and remembered. And whatever else one might say about her, she has never been known for holding back. Her 1996 memoir, written in the raw aftermath of her divorce from Prince Andrew, was so candid that it famously cost her the friendship of Princess Diana over a single offhand comment about borrowing her shoes. That was no accident. It revealed a woman who had consciously decided that her own truth mattered more than other people's comfort. It is precisely this version of Fergie, the candid, emotional, plain-speaking one, rather than the calculated and strategic one, that has Harry and Meghan on edge. The more guarded Fergie, who loyally protected Andrew and remained discreet out of duty to the Queen, had reasons to stay silent. She had something to lose. Those constraints are now rapidly disappearing. Publishing. Executives have already begun circling. Major houses have approached Ferguson about a full, no-holds-barred memoir. Having written or co-written more than 60 books, she understands the industry intimately. Having watched the global reaction to Harry's Spare, she also knows exactly what the right story can command in today's market. For the first time in years, she is in a position where she can truly tell it. Ferguson has never been known for diplomatic language or softening her opinions for the sake of harmony. Her tendency to speak plainly and emotionally about her experiences creates an unpredictability that is profoundly unsettling. Not just for the Sussexes, but for the wider royal family. Quiet reports have begun to surface in publishing circles. And among trusted journalists, Sarah Ferguson is in serious discussions about a proper insider account of her life inside the Windsor family. Sources suggest there is every possibility she will sign a deal for a substantial advance to commit her version of events to paper. Once in print, the narrative can no longer be controlled or the fallout contained. And controlling the narrative has always been the royal family's central concern. Its survival depends on shaping how its story is told. When that control slips, as it did with Diana, the Oprah interview, or the scandals surrounding Andrew, the damage is severe and long-lasting. A memoir from Fergie, written at this moment. With no remaining palace loyalties to honor and no institutional future to protect, could represent the most significant threat to that narrative control in the entire Sussex era. Potentially more dangerous than Spare, more damaging than the Netflix series, and more explosive than the Oprah interview. Because Fergie would not be the central subject of the story, she would be the witness. And witnesses are often the most dangerous storytellers of all. Royal journalist Tom Sykes, who has followed the family for years, has described the combination of factors Fergie now faces as making her potentially the most dangerous book currently looming over the royal family. Not another Sussex project, but Fergie herself. In short, she appears ready to go nuclear. For a long time, Sarah Ferguson resisted the temptation to cash in, accepting handouts from anyone willing to provide them. But now, having been largely sidelined by the business world, the entertainment industry, and the British royal family, she sees a Prince Harry-style autobiography as her path to a major payday. We need to be precise here. When discussing what Fergie knows and what she could reveal in a book that might genuinely damage Harry and Meghan, two distinct categories of information emerge, and they are not equally explosive. The first category consists of events she witnessed firsthand during the Sussexes' time in the royal family. This includes Meghan's behavior upon joining the firm, her treatment of staff, and the private dynamics that sharply contradicted the polished public image the couple projected. Fergie was not on the periphery. Among the extended royal family, Harry and Meghan were closest to the Yorks. They actively gravitated toward them, apparently feeling a sense of kinship, two branches of the family that viewed themselves as outsiders, bound by a shared resentment toward William and Catherine. This proximity matters. Fergie didn't hear about Meghan's conduct through rumors or courtiers. She was present. She observed events directly, engaged in conversations, and formed strong personal opinions based on first-hand experience, observations that have remained private until now because she previously had reasons to keep them that way. The second category is far more sensitive. It concerns what Meghan may or may not have known about the social circles she moved in before becoming a royal. The world of private members' clubs, yacht trips, high-profile charity events, and the network of extremely wealthy and well-connected individuals whose names have since taken on unexpected significance. What makes this particularly striking is that it goes beyond speculation. There is documented photographic evidence of the circles Meghan inhabited, evidence that mainstream media has largely chosen not to examine. This includes the fact that Meghan Markle was friends with Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. They vacationed together, and multiple photos exist from their yacht holiday. Despite this being verifiable, the mainstream press has barely mentioned it, offering what many see as questionable protection to these facts. Further raising concerns, Virginia Giuffre's attorney, David Boies, stated on the public record that he believed Meghan possessed information relevant to his client's case, specifically regarding Prince Andrew, and wanted her to provide testimony. This statement, made by a prominent lawyer in a legal context, has never been properly addressed and has been almost entirely ignored by mainstream outlets, which itself is noteworthy. In Spare, Harry and Meghan criticized nearly everyone: King, Charles, Camilla, William, courtiers, and the British press. Almost no one escaped unscathed. Yet Prince Andrew, who has endured total public humiliation and barely appears in public life anymore, received only a single, brief paragraph. If there were no shared history, knowledge, or connection requiring careful handling, one might have expected them to treat him as harshly as everyone else. Their restraint is, in hindsight, strikingly loud. Boies' desire for Meghan's testimony further supports the idea that Andrew and Meghan's paths had crossed. Combined with her documented friendship and holidays with Epstein's longtime partner, it paints a compelling picture. Stepping back from the personal and political angles, the commercial reality is equally significant for the Sussexes. Harry's memoir reportedly secured a roughly $20 million advance and became one of the fastest-selling non-fiction books in recent memory. Fergie's agents will be running the same numbers. They will be calculating the value of an unfiltered account from the mother of two princesses, the ex-wife of the most scandal-plagued Windsor, and a woman who was in the room for many of these events. The figure they arrive at is likely to be very substantial. This is the aspect of Fergie that many consistently underestimate. she is not naive about the publishing industry. She is not stumbling blindly into a deal she doesn't understand. Sarah Ferguson has written or co-written more than 60 books. Over decades in the publishing world, she has developed a keen understanding of what the industry rewards and what it punishes. Having watched Harry publish his own story and witnessed the global reaction, she knows precisely the kind of narrative that captures massive attention and commands enormous value. Now, her personal, financial, and emotional circumstances have aligned in a way that makes writing such a book not merely tempting, but entirely rational. Loyalty, or rather its gradual erosion, also plays a key role. For years, Fergie's discretion was sustained by a form of institutional loyalty, which was itself reinforced by the practical advantages of staying within the Windsor orbit. Even from a distance, and even in moments of disgrace, there remained a subtle sense of belonging to something greater than herself. That sense has now vanished. The benefits of loyalty have been withdrawn, removing the incentive that once made silence the wiser choice. She needs to produce something impactful. It has to be sensational, something that will dominate global headlines, spark intense discussion, and generate widespread dissection. The most obvious and effective route is to reveal details about Harry and Meghan. None of this should surprise anyone who has followed Sarah Ferguson's life over the years. The pattern is long established: desperation, proximity to scandal, and a readiness to cross boundaries that others deem impassable. These have defined the rhythm of her life for decades. Her 1996 memoir was, for its time, remarkably bold. Released in the aftermath of her failed marriage, it named names, described intimate moments, and disclosed details that royal insiders viewed as profoundly disloyal. The book cost her Diana's friendship, arguably the most valuable relationship she had at the time. Yet she published it anyway, driven by financial necessity and the urge to tell her own story. The calculation she made then mirrors the one she is weighing now. While the variables have changed and the stakes are significantly higher, the underlying logic remains the same. Adding further complexity is the shadow of Prince Andrew's associations, which have intersected with the Ferguson narrative in ways only now coming into sharper focus. Leaked emails, released amid various document disclosures, revealed discussions about leveraging Beatrice and Eugenie's names and royal connections to help resolve Fergie's financial difficulties. The apparent plan involved approaching wealthy individuals for funding that would trade on the princess's royal status. It is unclear whether the scheme ever materialized, but what is evident is that it was seriously contemplated. This context explains the significance of Prince William's push for a thorough financial audit of Beatrice and Eugenie. The purpose is not primarily to punish them for their parents' decisions, but to fully understand the extent of any potential entanglements. Until the sources of the money and what was offered in return are clarified, the risk to the monarchy remains unquantified, and an unquantified risk is unacceptable for an institution working to stabilize and rebuild. At the center of all this stands Fergie, who metaphorically knows where the bodies are buried. She was present during the critical years in question. She witnessed the Sussex era, the private moments, and the off-the-record conversations that never entered the official record. She is one of the few people capable of connecting the dots across multiple chapters of recent royal history, making her uniquely and extraordinarily positioned to be potentially dangerous. A major publishing advance, something on the scale of the $20 million Harry reportedly received, is likely what she is seeking. Those most alarmed by this prospect are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, as Fergie possesses intimate knowledge of what truly occurred behind the scenes involving the couple, the broader royal family, and Andrew. Then there is Harry himself. Regardless of what Meghan knew or didn't know, or any prior connections she may have had, Harry's silence regarding Andrew tells its own story, and arguably the more significant one. Harry grew up in the family, he attended the same events, moved in the same circles, and had access to the same private knowledge about his uncle's behavior as any close family member would. He was in his early 20s when the first serious public allegations against Andrew surfaced, old enough to comprehend what was being said and to form his own judgment. Yet through every subsequent revelation, every scandal, and throughout the writing of Spare, he said almost nothing. The single paragraph he devoted to the matter, as has been widely observed, was not really about Andrew at all. It focused instead on Harry's own security arrangements and what he portrayed as institutional inconsistency. It was not an effort to expose his uncle or demand accountability. Someone who had chosen, with extraordinary care and deliberation, to leave certain things unsaid. When you examine what Harry was willing to say about Charles, Camilla, William, Catherine, and the British press, and then contrast that with his complete silence on Prince Andrew, the difference is striking. The revelations Harry did include in Spare caused genuine pain to real people. Yet, what he deliberately omitted was almost certainly far more explosive than anything he actually disclosed. Why the omission? Following the logic leads back to the same recurring explanation: mutual protection. The Yorks and the Sussexes, two branches of the family that found themselves marginalized and on the outside, appear to have maintained an unspoken understanding. They would not attack one another, because doing so risked revelations that neither side wanted to face. For years, this informal pact seems to have been the one promise neither side broke, until recently. Many observers argue Harry has been brainwashed by Meghan. Since their marriage, he appears to have developed a sudden hatred for his country, his family, and the institution of royalty itself, trading it all for an unremarkable life in California. To many, this does not look like a marriage. It looks like a hostage situation. Let us be clear about what this mutual protection arrangement actually involved. It went far beyond simply avoiding mentions of each other in interviews. It was a sustained, active decision repeated over several years to shield the Yorks from scrutiny at moments when that scrutiny could have been catastrophic. Consider the timing. The height of Harry and Meghan's public offensive against the royal family, the Oprah interview, Spare, and the Netflix series overlapped almost precisely with the period when the full extent of Andrew's scandals was emerging. This included his legal settlement, the stripping of his military titles, and his removal from public life. These were moments of extreme vulnerability for the York family. And yet Harry and Meghan, who had repeatedly shown their willingness to weaponize vulnerability, said nothing of substance about Andrew. Nothing that could have made an already dire situation significantly worse. That restraint was not accidental. It was a conscious choice. And such choices are rarely made without reason. They are made when there is something significant to gain from silence, or something devastating to lose from speaking. The most compelling explanation is a tit-for-tat dynamic. If Meghan, in her previous life, moved in social circles that overlapped with Andrew's, if there are photographs, witnesses, or accounts of shared events and acquaintances that have never surfaced, then Andrew would have held powerful leverage. The arrangement would have been simple. You don't. Come after me, and I won't come after you. Everyone holds their breath and prays the files remain sealed. Of course, files rarely stay sealed forever. And that is exactly why the equilibrium that held for years is now beginning to fracture. Sarah Ferguson, Fergie, who has been present through it all and knows far more than most, is no longer bound by the old rules. She has, quite literally, lost the constraints that once kept her silent. It is not hard to imagine Meghan receiving invitations through her network of friends to the lavish parties Epstein was known for, events filled with young women, some professionals, some aspiring models, and some D-list actresses chasing fame. There is a credible possibility that Meghan knows things about Andrew. Her silence, and Harry's, throughout their many attacks on the family only strengthens that impression. One of the most persistent and painful aspects of the Sussex era has been the gap between what Harry and Meghan have publicly claimed about their time in the royal family and what those who were actually there, staff, courtiers, and family members, know to be true. That gap has never been fully closed, not because counter-evidence doesn't exist, it does in abundance, but because those who hold it have chosen, for various reasons, not to speak publicly. Fergie, if she decides to, could close much of that gap. She was close enough to Harry and Meghan during their royal years to have witnessed firsthand how they operated, their treatment of staff, their demands, and the way Meghan chose to engage, or not engage, with the institution. Many people experienced these things. Many journalists have reported them, but they have never been confirmed by someone inside the family itself. That is the crucial difference. When a courtier describes Meghan as difficult, it can be dismissed as establishment spin. When a journalist reports allegations of problematic behavior, it can be framed as tabloid rumor. But when a senior royal family member speaks from direct, personal knowledge, the weight is entirely different. A smear campaign can be easily dismissed. But when a woman who married into the royal family, sat at the same Christmas table, and maintained her own complex and often difficult relationship with the institution speaks out, the usual defenses become far harder to sustain. This is what Harry and Meghan truly fear. Not mere gossip or rumors, but credible confirmation. Sarah Ferguson, drawing from her own direct experience, would be saying, "Yes, I saw it. I was there. And what I witnessed confirms what many have long suspected." Her accounts of how Meghan treated Queen Elizabeth II, the woman Fergie has always spoken of with deep affection and reverence, and whose dogs she took in after her passing, would carry a moral authority that no palace briefing or tabloid headline could match. Meghan's arrival into the family was marked by behavior that was widely described as difficult and unkind toward those around her. Given Fergie's well-known loyalty to the late Queen, her testimony would be especially damaging. After everything the Queen did for Harry and Meghan, such revelations would further expose the inconsistencies in their public narrative. Yet, there is another, even more complex dimension to this story beyond the Sussexes. Sarah Ferguson's decision about whether to write this book isn't just about herself. It directly affects her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, and her grandchildren. The question is whether the York princesses still have any viable future within the royal framework, or whether that door has now been permanently closed. Prince William has made his position unmistakably clear. He has excluded them from Royal Ascot this year, reportedly instructed senior royals not to be photographed with them, and requested a financial audit of their affairs, an audit they have, by several accounts, declined to undergo. Quietly but firmly, he has drawn a line around the core of the institution that does not include them. Beatrice, 36, and Eugenie, 34, are no longer simply extensions of their parents' story. They are mothers with young children and husbands pursuing their own careers. They are trying to build independent lives while navigating a difficult situation they did not entirely create. Columnist Celia Walden, who knows the York princesses personally, has made a strong case that they are being judged unfairly. They have never sold stories, published tell-all memoirs, given hostile interviews, or embarrassed the institution as their parents once did. The late Queen loved them and wanted them looked after. These facts, Walden argues, should count for something. Yet the questions remain. There is the matter of the requested audit, and what those financial records might reveal. There are reports of business arrangements considered during times of acute family financial pressure. William's insistence on transparency before any reintegration suggests his concerns go beyond general good governance. Fergie knows the answers: what was discussed, what was decided, and what ultimately happened. If she writes the book, both what she says and what she carefully omits could reveal how much her daughters knew and when they knew it. It is possible that Beatrice and Eugenie, hoping to salvage their own positions, may urge their mother not to publish something so potentially damaging. However, many believe there is no realistic path back for the York princesses now. At the heart of these decisions stands William. The choices being made at the center of the royal family, firm, deliberate, and unsentimental, are his choices. As the future of the monarchy, he is acting accordingly. William's exclusion of the York princesses is not merely personal, it is institutional policy. The standards of transparency and accountability the family now demands are non-negotiable. They are not waived for family ties or historical connections. Those who do not meet them cannot enjoy the benefits and associations of an institution working hard to restore its credibility. Previous generations handled scandals differently, absorbing them quietly, managing them behind the scenes, and preserving the appearance of family unity. The Queen was a master of this approach. William, however, appears to have concluded that the old way no longer works in the modern era. His strategy is one of radical transparency and firm boundaries. Clarity has arrived. The message is simple: meet the standard, or find yourself outside it. The implications for the York family, and by extension for Sarah Ferguson's calculations regarding her upcoming book, are stark. What Prince William is effectively communicating is that there is nothing left to salvage. The bridge has already been burned. Any hope that restraint or good behavior might now restore some form of access or acceptance is misplaced. Such options are simply not on the table. This leaves one key question. What will Fergie do with the paradoxical freedom that complete exclusion now grants her? Something must be done to safeguard the future of the monarchy. Both Harry and Prince Andrew represent significant risks, and that reality needs to be confronted urgently. One clear path forward is the removal of their titles, and many believe it is the only responsible course of action. The situation with Fergie sheds unusually clear light on a broader truth about the Sussex story. The relationships Harry and Meghan have built and subsequently destroyed reveal a consistent, repeating pattern. It is a pattern of using people, discarding them, and then acting surprised when those same individuals eventually speak out. Fergie is not the first person once close to Harry and Meghan who now poses a potential threat through damaging revelations. She is not the first whose loyalty was assumed, whose discretion was taken for granted, and who now finds herself less bound by those expectations. The list of such people, individuals who were present, who know sensitive details, and who remained silent for reasons that may not hold indefinitely, is longer than Harry and Meghan would care to admit. This pattern predates Meghan's entry into the royal family. It extends to friendships before Harry, to those who were part of her life during her suit's years, and notably to her relationships with her father and half-siblings. The consistent thread is not mere bad luck or misunderstanding. It points to something more fundamental, a tendency to place self-interest above all else, such that the well-being and dignity of those around her become secondary concerns. Late Queen gave Harry and Meghan, particularly Meghan, an extraordinary opportunity. She offered Meghan a place in one of the world's oldest and most respected institutions, an honor most people could only dream of, along with the chance to build a lasting legacy far beyond personal ambition. Yet, by all accounts from those present, it was not enough. Meghan wanted more than the institution was prepared to give, while offering less than it demanded in return. When the tension proved irreconcilable, they did not depart gracefully. The truth about Meghan is she will always find a way in which she thinks she can win, and the casualties are irrelevant. Whether it's her father, her old best friends, or her first husband, there will always be casualties in her life. The question is, when will Harry become one? So where does this leave the relationship between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family? In a worse state than at almost any point since their departure, a damning assessment in itself. The hoped-for rapprochement, the gradual softening of positions, the quiet rebuilding of contact, and the idea that time and distance might foster some form of reconciliation have not materialized. If anything, the trajectory has moved in the opposite direction. William's stance toward his brother has hardened. King Charles, despite his illness and the personal pain of the estrangement, finds himself constrained by the difficult reality that any public warmth toward Harry and Meghan would be seen as a betrayal of William and Catherine. For their part, the Sussexes have done little to make reconciliation easier. Their brand rolls on. The content continues. The commercial use of their royal connections, titles, and perceived insider access persists. Harry has reportedly expressed private desires for a quieter life, closer to the family and country he left behind. However, there remains a wide gap between his private feelings and his public actions, a disconnect that has become the central tragedy of his story. Into this already fraught situation steps Fergie, a wild card with her own grievances, financial pressures, and complicated emotions toward the family and the institution. Having observed the Harry and Meghan saga from a position of close, often uncomfortable proximity, she has now reached a point where the cost-benefit calculation of continued silence no longer favors restraint. It all adds up in her favor, and both the Sussexes and the palace know it. Managing a potential memoir from Sarah Ferguson isn't some abstract thought experiment. It's an active, urgent, and genuinely complex challenge with no easy or obvious solution. The palace and the Ahi. Sussexes understand the Yorks well, partly because Harry and Meghan were once closer to them than to almost anyone else in the family. They frequently spent time with the Yorks, bonding over their shared sense of being outsiders and freely criticizing William and Catherine. Even as Harry and Meghan now try to distance themselves from that connection, the history remains. Stepping back from the immediate drama, the Fergie situation reveals something bigger. It's not just about one woman deciding whether to write a book. It's about the limits of silence as a strategy. It's about what happens when those who know the you most about a powerful story have nothing left to lose. And it highlights the Sussex saga's remarkable, seemingly endless ability to create new threats, complications, and potential damage, not only for Harry and Meghan, but for everyone who was ever close to them. The Netflix situation reflects the same underlying problem. Reports suggest the streamer is considering special episodes focused on major royal scandals, rather than a full returning series, with Prince Andrew's story reportedly high on the list. A high-profile dramatization reaching audiences on the scale of The Crown, one that shapes public understanding of events, would be a major cultural moment, and one over which neither the palace nor the Sussexes would have any real control. For millions of people, especially younger viewers who didn't live through these events, such dramatizations become history. They shape how people understand what happened. Any episode drawing on the public record and subsequent revelations would inevitably invite comparisons between the circles around Andrew and those documented around others, circles that, as evidence increasingly suggests, overlapped in ways the public has not yet fully confronted. This loss of control, the feeling that the story is no longer manageable, and that those who once held the narrative have lost their grip, is the defining anxiety for the royal family right now. They cannot undo Harry's words in Spare. They cannot erase what Netflix already showed. All they can do is try to manage what comes next. And if Fergie moves forward with a book, what comes next may be harder to handle than anything before it. Harry and Meghan could dismiss Spare by claiming the palace was briefing against them. They could frame the Netflix documentary as the work of sympathetic filmmakers, but they cannot credibly paint Fergie as an establishment plant. If anything, she is the establishment's most troublesome estranged member. She has no obligation to protect the palace, nor any reason to shield Harry and Meghan. For the first time in her public life, she is truly her own agent. That freedom, that complete absence of loyalty or obligation, is precisely what makes her the most interesting and most dangerous figure in the current royal story. Sarah Ferguson stands at a crossroads. On one side is silence, along with the faint, fading hope that her daughters and grandchildren might still find some path back into the institution she once married into. On the other side is the book, the big payday, the final word, and the chance to tell her truth on her own terms, potentially confirming long-held suspicions about Harry, Meghan, and the hidden dynamics of the Sussex years. It's an extraordinary position, and there's a certain poetic justice in the fact that Harry and Meghan's own choices, their silences, their protective alliances, and their treatment of those around them, have helped create the very circumstances that now threaten them most. As we reach the end of this story, I'm left wondering, if you were in Fergie's position, knowing what she knows, and having seen what she has seen, after giving decades of loyalty to an institution that has now completely shut the door on you, would you stay silent? And do Harry and Meghan truly deserve the protection that silence would provide? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. This community's perspective on these stories is always insightful, and I genuinely look forward to it. Thank you for being here and watching until the end. It means a lot. This channel exists because of your loyalty, curiosity, and willingness to engage seriously with these topics. If you found this worthwhile, please like the video. It really helps. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time. And feel free to share it with anyone who might find it as fascinating as you did.